So I'll walk through sort of like what the Jade Lizard is for everybody. And then after that, you can give me sort of like your questions and your Q&A on that aspect. So it it complements the wheel strategy that we already do pretty well because it's the same thing as if we were just simply selling a put to capture upside gains, right? So your classic strategy for wheels, let's say you do 44 days out and you want to sell a $27 put for premium, um, for 44 days out at $2.16 or $216 for credit, and your buying power is going to require about 2,487, right? It's 2,700 less the credit you receive, 216. And the P&L curve looks like this, where it's just $213 straight across if the stock just simply runs to infinity and beyond, right? And your break even point is 2489 or 2480 something ish. And that is pretty much the strike price less the credit you receive. The credit you receive just kind of dwindles down at this particular point. But as we recall, we don't really care even if it goes to $1, right? The idea is that if we get assigned the shares, we're okay with it because the goal is to get paid while shopping for shares, right? 100 or one lot or 100 shares at a time. But what if I could tell you you could have your cake and eat it too, while still kind of maximizing the flexibility of what this strategy already allows you to? Because let's say, for example, it moves down to, let's say, $25 or 25.50, and I just simply want to roll the put, right? You roll it and you roll it down so that you could get a lower strike price. Therefore, you are, trying to get a lower shares and collect credit all at the same time. We already know that for those who are already familiar with this portion of the strategy. But what if I were to add a second component to this particular strategy that allows me to make money while doing that rolling, extra money while doing that rolling? And that's where the Jade Lizard is in. And with the Jade Lizard, we have our $27 put that we've already sold right here. But what we're going to do is we're going to create almost like a strangle. I'm going to choose a $30 uh, call to sell. And then on top of that, I'm going to buy the 30.50 call as well. Now let's take a look at that P&L curve. I know that it kind of blocks up half of the screen, but the P&L curve changes slightly. Now, if it moves to infinity and beyond, the P&L curve is only $182. But if it hits anywhere between $30 and $27, let's say, it maximizes that profitability to $232. So it's a little bit more than what I was actually getting when I just simply did the naked put. So it gives me this almost strangle-like sweet spot that I'm trying to put the target price into while still maintaining the same characteristics as doing the naked put itself by itself. And the buying power doesn't really increase all that much. And so why would I do this and limit sort of like my infinite upside protection? Well, let's just say if the stock is moving, but not moving as fast and as hard as it used to, and you're thinking, oh, it might slow down in this range, and by doing this, you can capture some extra premium while doing what you already know how to do. Now, what happens if it moves against you? What happens if it's like $25, like in the same scenario before? Well, we can simply roll the put like we normally do, right? But guess what happens when we roll the put? So by deleting this, it's basically like pretending like I just rolled that put. Now we just have this call vertical that we have left, And if the stock is really, really far down, we're talking like 22 or like in the teens or whatever, by the virtue of rolling that put down, we leave this vertical put by itself, and then we can capture the $15 in premium that the vertical put is providing for us. So effectively, we get paid if the stock moves really far against us, and then we also still get to roll our put for additional credit and fight another day and get lower strike prices if we want to. And then simultaneously, if we were to be right, whether we are really right or whether we are somewhat in the ballpark right, or if it moves really far against us, we are simply protected. And you can modify this J Lizard any way you want. So if you move the short call vertical closer to at the money, the profit curve kind of shifts over. And then if you tighten it even more, so let's say we move this further down and you tighten it right there, this becomes wider and then that becomes thinner as a result. And of course, you can move this closer and then it modifies it in any way possible. But for the most part, I like to push the Jade Lizard to the same whiffs that I would as like a typical strangle. So I usually do like a 30 delta wide put, and then a 30 delta wide call, which is further down here. This is like the standard textbook way of doing it. And then it gives you a big, nice and fat graph right here that gives you a large target zone while maintaining some sort of profitability further out if it really runs against you. But then simultaneously, you already know what to do when it hits this target zone. You just simply roll and then collect your call vertical spread and then move on with your life. So that's the Jade Lizard in a nutshell. And I have Joe on the line with me, and he had some questions about the Jade Lizard. So take it away, Joe.
Can you repeat a little bit what you said about the deltas being 30 delta? What does that mean?
So the deltas right here on this column right here, delta is the measurement of or prediction, right? The mathematical calculation of change. And so what it's saying in terms of or it's really complex, but the best way I can describe delta is like what is the specific strike price you're selecting is closest to the equivalent of 100 shares. So let's say, for example, if I go in the call side, this might be more easier to digest if we look at calls, right? And you understand in a normal call situation, if the stock price moves up, right? If Soxo moves $1 up, right?
Hmm.
In if I own 100 shares of Soxo and the stock went $1 up, I will now have $100 right in my pocket. So it's 1 to 1. Stock moves up $1, I gain $1 right for every share I own. Now the delta of a stock of a option contract is the equivalency of that dollar. So this is a 92 positive delta, which translates, or you can translate it in your head as this is the equivalent of synthetically owning 92% of 100 shares of stock. So if I were to buy this $20 strike call option, because this is deep in the money, right? In exchange for $865 or 865 for the contract times 100, I'm synthetically owning 100 shares of Soxel at $20, or rather, synthetically owning it at the strike price at the current stock price that I bought it at. So what that means is that if this goes up $1, the same $1 scenario,
Hmm.
29.25, then that means that 92% of that $100 that should have went up $1, I get 92% or 92 cents added to my contract, which translates to $92. So the closer or deeper at the money you are, the closer you are synthetically creating a position, long or short, from a stock value. Now, when it comes to using delta in that put scenario, it means that for every time the stock goes up that same $1, it would mean that I gain 32 cents, right? Because it's negative. It's like I shorted, right? The equivalent
Mm-hmm.
of shorting it in the opposite direction. So, but you don't have to worry too much about the negative part. Just the denotion of the 0.32 means that it's like 32%. I'll get 32 cents for every time the stock goes up $1, right? And so but the delta can also be used as it's very useful. It has multiple like uses. You can also use delta as like a percentage in the money calculation. So let's see. Do I have it?
When you were
Uh,
saying you
hmm
want to choose a 30, when you were saying you want to choose a 30 delta, you mean
like a
on that
30. Yep.
like 30 cents there?
Yeah. So like when I'm
Okay.
trying to pick like what is the width of my strikes, right? In this strategy, I'm picking it based off of the delta because the secondary use that I just mentioned about what delta can be used for is like treat it like the percentage or probability of in the money, right? So this calculation right here that they offer in Thinkorswim is a calculation of probability in the money, which uses delta and a bit of vega to calculate this percentage. But most people, if they didn't have these fancy things that are included, you can use delta as like kind of like a percentage of in the money, out of the money, like gauge if you want to. So in this case, this would be like the equivalency of saying that the person who has a 26 who buys a $26 strike for a put has a 32% chance of getting to 26. And then
Okay.
the if I did the 22, it's a 22% chance. And then you go further away, right? A $20 strike put, it's very very unlikely, a 9% chance that they could get to $20 in 45 days. And so you can use it like that in terms of how you use delta as like your guide. And so a 30 um, strangle is like a standard kind of medium risk type of strangle.
Mm-hmm.
And notice how it's much farther, right? Strike price wise for a 30 delta on the call side than it is for the put side. So, what that means is that this stock has what's called positive skew or call side skew, meaning that because Soxel has been rallying like a motherfucker for the past few weeks, maybe even a month, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it carries with it statistical data that's fed into this calculation that the
It's kind of
probability
like
of
momentum.
calculating. Mm-hmm. So it's baked into the price that if you want to do the same percentage, right, 31% or 30%, you need to go farther out for that call strike. And so, and that's why the 30 automatically gives you that skew to help you gather what is the best kind of balanced, range, right, between the two areas that you're looking for. If you want to go safer, the textbook way of saying a safe strangle is doing a 20 delta and 20 delta wide. And the best part is that when you get into tasty trade, it will give you standard deviations already clearly outlined where they should be. So if you ever were to do a strangle or a jade lizard, they have like a literal colored highlight for you to pick the exact thing. You don't even have to do any delta calculations or any delta analysis. They already just picked out their standard deviation right there for you. So, but in this case, we're using Thinkorswim. So just use your deltas as your guides. So if you want some medium risk, 30 delta is usually the good is like my sweet spot for maximum premium relative to
Risk.
the risk, right? And then but this textbook way of dealing of picking a delta is usually they recommend 20 delta to almost guarantee that you will not guarantee, but definitely give you the best possible calculated risk. But the premium difference between the two is substantial enough that I would rather just go with the 30 delta. And I think Tasty Trade did do their own study measuring 20 delta and 30 delta strangles. And yes, the 20 delta strangles had a higher win rate, but the amount of premium over 1 year was net between the two strategies. The 30 delta strangle had a higher P&L at the end of the year just because of the nature of gathering more premium, even though it had a lower win rate.
Hmm.
So that's a great question.
Okay.
Any others?
I think for how do you manage it after a while? Like once you get
Ah,
to like 21 DTE.
great question. So when we get to 21 days in that Jade Lizard example, so let's pick I guess I'll use the same strikes that I used before in the example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we got our Jade Lizard here. I wish I could show you more of that. I guess this one worked better. Okay,
Keep
cool.
keep the
So
graph
let's say,
alone.
I'm sorry?
Like you can remove the this thing on the bottom. Or no, never mind. You can't.
Okay, no worries. Yeah. So let's say, for example, we go to 21 days out. So what's 21 days away from 44?
October
It doesn't
2nd.
really. Hmm?
October 2nd,
October 2nd? Okay. Oh,
I
you
think
mean
so.
February 2nd?
February 2nd.
Okay, correct. Perfect. So we move the calendar to February 2nd, and this is the theoretical P&L curve during that time period. So let's give the three scenarios, right? The best case scenarios, obviously, the strike, let's say the stock just didn't move at all, period. And it's just sitting right here. And in my situation, I usually just let it run. I let it run and I just keep collecting that data until it pretty much hits that fat zone. But if I start to notice that there's going to be activity, like more volume, more volatility, or that the stock price is just going to get juiced and it's just going to keep moving forward, I actually don't really care. Why? Because your maximum P&L is right here. So if we're in a situation where it floats in this range, or even if it touches the like non-profitable zone right here, I actually don't sweat it too much because if it keeps floating in this range, I know that I'm going to just basically get a decent chance that I'm going to hit my maximum profitability by expiration or the last week of expiration. So Jade Lizards, the maximum profitability only hits when you get really close to the expiration. So let's say, for example, we get to February 23rd is the expiration. Let's get to like Monday before the expiration. So we got 4 or 5 days left, right? And look at the P&L curve right now. Now it's in that nice, sweet profitability zone. I would just take it off anywhere here if it landed into that. So that's the downside with the J Lizard is that your max P&L pretty much gets actualized right away. I'm sorry, not actualized. It only gets actualized when you like really juiced out the entire duration of the trade itself. And so these are one of those like helpful strategies for when you just want to set a strategy and then walk away, and then just like if it comes to like 16 days to expiration, you take a peek, and then as long as you're not moving too far away from where your target goal, which is the only concern is like when you're down here, then you should be good. If it keeps running away from you at any point in time, so let's go back to that 21-day scenario, right, that you mentioned before, February
Mm-hmm.
2nd. So let's say it ran $31 and up, and it's somewhere in here, just close it. The soonest that it gets to this, this bar right here, just close the position. Don't waste any more time. Just collect that 143. And the good thing is that you can collect this P&L really early on. So that's why I like the Jade Lizard too, because if we were back in, let's say it's 110 right now. Let's say in 4 days from now, the stock moved like a solid $5. Well, guess what? You're really close to that maximum P&L in this like infinite zone right here. So just close it, right? You've
Yeah, there's
collected
no point
the
of keeping it open because you can't collect more unless it goes down, and it's unlikely to do so,
exactly.
right?
Exactly. So like it gives you the flexibility to just like leave it alone and wait for a pullback if you so choose. But at that point in time, you're kind of wasting time when you can realistically just close it and open a new J Lizard if you so choose to, or a new strategy, right? That takes care of like your downside or your range based kind of assumption. So you're just trading with what the market gives you. So this just basically gives you a neutral to bullish kind of like upside protection. And then simultaneously, it gives you the oh shit, I forgot about it protection because you can always roll the put and then collect the call vertical afterwards. That's like the sort of like the it's kind of like a no brainer and like a safety net type of strategy. The only difference is that if the stock moves really far against you, here you just have the same problem about having your puts being constantly rolled down, or you just put up your hands and say, fuck it, I'll get assigned, right? So it's not really like a negative to it because at the end of the day, your P&L cannot be greater than the cost of what's it called? Um, right here, the cost of
The
100
max loss.
shares at $26, right? So, but you keep the credit. So when keeping the credit, it's going to be the equivalent of um, 193, right? 193 minus 26. So let's just pretend this was like an even 200 that we collected to make the math easier. Then essentially your max loss is that you are buying 20 100 shares of Soxel at $26 for the price of $24, right? Of each share. So you only pay $2,400 in that theoretical situation, and then you're just gonna just keep those shares and just wait for it to just move up again, which we already know it's possible and it's likely that it does happen, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, good question.
So when you roll your put alone, does it consider it like a different position now?
Nope. So that's the beauty behind options. It's like Legos. Each of these positions can function, can be closed, rolled, or like paired together, all however you choose, right? So in the example of the idea that my total P&L of all my positions collectively together is basically bullish, right? When you look at it from this perspective. But if I were to isolate which positions that I have, so let me zoom in a little bit more. So let's take a look at this 23, 23, 23 DTE. I select these three. And then look, oh, it's a Jade Lizard. And then guess what? It's so all I have to do is just wait a few days, and then if Soxel if semiconductors move up, I just collect my max P&L of $88, or I can just kind of hope and pray it chops around this range. And I opened this position when we were range bound between, oh look, 24.64 and $31. Yep. So when I was telling you about that range we were hitting between like 25 and $28, these were the strike prices that I chose to open that Jade Lizard. When I said I was opening Jade Lizards, I think I clearly said that I was doing that. And so now these are in the money, and It doesn't matter if the stock moves up or moves down, a solid like, you know, $4 or $5 almost on either side, and definitely infinite on the upside. I'm okay. And then the worst case scenario is I'm gonna collect, some shares of Soxel at $26 at a discount of $138. Yeah. So yeah, so that's my Jade Lizard right there. So the way you can organize multiple positions is just by looking at the DTE. And I know that there's like a bajillion 30 days right here. These are all just naked puts I just put out on my own. Oh, actually no, this is not it. This is a different strategy. This one's called a put butterfly. So, whoops, not that one. Actually, no, this isn't the put butterfly. These are just straight up naked puts I just put on. Yep. So this is done way before. I did it at 44 days to expirations back then. And so you look at the P&L curve on on this, right? And it it would have maxed out at 800 and something at approximately $28 and on. But then if we grind lower right here and it lands somewhere right here, yeah, I don't benefit as much. And it depends on the position, right? Obviously, this 24 is going to max out first. 25 may do it. 26 has a good chance, but the 28, I may, in theory, get assigned on that 28. But it's becoming less likely if it keeps moving up. So these are just naked puts, but I didn't think
Mm-hmm.
of spicing it up with the Jade Lizards until much later. I think I did another one right here. Here's a 30-day one. That's like a fat Jade Lizard right there. And then yeah, so you can get creative and modify the P&L curve however you choose. I usually just like a nice fat band. Oops. So like my J Lizards, I usually like a nice fat band where I get at least 50% more than if I just, if it went to infinity. That's usually how I price mines. The one you showed me earlier, Joseph, where it was kind of like a big hump and then like a tiny tail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's typically normal of how most people do their J lizards, but we know that Soxel is so volatile that it can swing so high. I wouldn't limit yourself, right, to such a small profit target curve because we know, right, that Soxel can move like like the wind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we might as well try to give ourselves a better chance and simulate a put, like the regular put short put premium, but simultaneously giving us that vertical spread protection, because this vertical spread right here will give me $13. And the only reason why that profit curve goes down as the price goes up is that the cost of the premium for that short put is eaten up by the 36, see right here, the $36.32 of the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
max loss of that short vertical.
I
And
see.
then actually
So,
what I've done, yep, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say what I've done before was I've accidentally rolled a put. Because when there was the pullback just a few days ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
I accidentally rolled a put on a Jade Lizard prematurely, and then what ended up happening was the short vertical on that Jade Lizard was in the money, just like how it is right here. And then because I already had rolled that put, I decided to just close this call vertical for a profit. It was a small profit, and then just opened a new call vertical on the one that I rolled, and just made a new J lizard as a result.
Ah, I see, I see.
Yeah, so
I
you can
was,
infinitely just keep replicating it over and over again. But the key is that your max P&L, sorry, your max loss has to be at least like make sense to you. It has to be at least smaller than the credit you're going to be receiving for that put, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but at the end of the day, it's still nice because it gives you the flexibility to move that call vertical way further out. So for example, if like um, this right here, let's say for example, the like I think, oh shit, I think it's gonna move up to like $36, right? Like really far out right here. And then that same scenario happened where I rolled the put and then this call vertical was in the money, so I closed the position, lock in the profits, and open a new one. So let's say, for example, I moved it to a 30-day one. I rolled it to a 30-day. Let's go 30-day. And then that same scenario, right? Our assumption is $36. I can go as far out to $36. Oh, what do you know? I have a vertical right here. And I can make my own vertical right here. It's only going to give me $3 this far out, but it's $47 risk. So at the end of the day, it's up to me to decide if I want to push the thing so far out so I can collect more premium that way. So it gives you a lot of flexibility at the end of the day. And it's just giving you
Mm-hmm.
like a little cherry on top. It's not going to be like astronomical money, but like, most of
It's
the
just
time
hedging your
what's
bets mostly.
it's just have it's just a built-in hedge. Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. So the fat part of the Jade Lizard is mostly done by having a 30 delta as opposed to using a 20 delta, which is what most people do conservatively.
The fatness of the curve, it's dependent mostly by the actual the option price itself. So if we the reason why it kind of looks a little funky too, um, primarily because these option prices, right? They're static. They are exactly when this left off, and we don't know what the volume is currently right now, right? So we're frozen in time because the market isn't open right now. So the assumption is if we were doing a 45-day out Jade Lizard and you wanted like a fatter curve, well, you can the fattest curve possible is what's called a big lizard, which is a strangle. So you pick the call, you short call and the short put at the same exact price. You pick your
Mm-hmm.
long call here, and then you pick your short put right there, and then that creates a more a closer at the money beefier profile. But big lizards, ooh, I'm an idiot. uh, this is not right.
By the
Go
way, we still have 5 minutes before the meeting ends.
Yeah, okay. um yeah, so I guess I can go over what a big lizard is in a different video. But overall that's pretty much like the fatness of that curve is really just more dependent on how close you are at the money rather than the width of the strikes. Obviously the width of the strikes does matter. um
Well, it also
the width
determines
of,
if the smaller it is, the closer you are to the money, right?
yeah, because the bulk of your money, remember, is through this put. So if you picked like a really conservative price down here, like 22,
Mm-hmm.
then look how skinny that becomes, right? So the infinite tail end is becomes less profitable because the bulk of your money comes from the idea of the put. The cherry on top is just this vertical. The only reason why the P&L curve is pretty fat is because the spread between this call vertical is really juicy because of all the call skew. Remember how the 30 delta was like way down here compared to the
Mm-hmm.
put?
I
And it's
see.
just
Okay.
because it's baked in, right? There's so many fucking buyers for calls right now. It's so hot. so that it gives you a lot of juicy premiums here, and then there's less juicy premiums on the put side. So when our assumption is still bullish, we can only take only a little bit off the top on the call side, where the bulk of our money is made on the put side. And so you can
Gotcha.
also reverse this too. Let's say, for example, you're like, oh shit, I think it's gonna go down, right? So you can do a reverse Jade Lizard, which is the same thing but just in reverse. So you get infinite downside protection, um, but then you get like a little cherry on top if the stock doesn't move. But then for the sake of the wheel strategy is not as useful because you have to contend with upside infinite loss, right? Upside infinite constant rolling, right? You can roll to protect yourself from a stock that goes to zero, but you can't roll to protect yourself from a stock that goes to infinity.
Yeah, it's almost like just shorting the stock. Huh?
Yes. Or like pretending like you want to benefit if the stock just stays put or if it's going to drop, right?
Hmm.
Like you're not sure it's going to drop, but you're creating the J lizard because you have an assumption that it may just stay put. But there's other better, safer strategies for those types of like moves than a Jade Lizard would be. The Jade Lizard just fits perfectly because the biggest risk, right, the undefined risk is at the put side because we already are selling a put. So it's one of those things where it's like you might as well add a cherry on top and then make it more juicier, right? If
Hmm.
if the stock doesn't move any further, then we benefit from that. And if it does, well, at least we have some premium out of it.
Hmm.
Our
Hmm.
bullish assumption is still not destroyed. And then if we are totally fucking wrong, well, guess what? We already know what we do when we manage, right? For the stock moving against us. And the best part is you leave that call vertical alone. And when you leave that call vertical alone, or rather, by the time the stock is deep in the money here, this call vertical right here will be so deep in the money
Just buy it back.
that
It's
you just buy to close exactly. So lock in that profit. So you got premium for rolling, you get premium for the call vertical, and then you get a new put. It's like it's a win-win. So
hmm
it's one of those things where as I was trying to figure out where we can tweak the wheel strategy to be more efficient, to net more credit, to give us more flexibility and options, J lizards are my new favorite for that now.
That's good. I think we're at time as well. So perfect ending.
Perfect, perfect. All right. Thank you for all the questions.